Alright, so in this video here, I'm going to start off with actually setting up the scene for our character that I have gotten from the modeler or anybody that designed this character ready to go to be put into the art kit that will eventually go into Unreal. ArtKit's a great tool. It definitely helps out with getting your characters up and running pretty quick with a lot of options available just alone in the user interface. But anyhow, let's move along. Well, for starters, we got this character here. One of the girls from our game we're currently making. It's a proxy shooter game, and right off the bat, you guys will probably notice that she is pretty big. And reason being is this character was supposed to be originally designed to be this size according to what our characters were. I was basing them off of a box I pulled off in measurement to height to the third person blueprint template. She did come in around this size, but she is going to have to be a little bit bigger. So first thing we need to do is we notice that even in our viewing cube and on our X, Y, and Z axis that she is facing the wrong direction, and also that the Y direction is up and we need that to be Z up. That will happen here in a little bit, but first thing we need to do, let's go ahead and flip her around. I have her on discrete rotate for that tool. If you need to have if you're trying to make like exact measurements when you're rotating, in your options here, if you just double click, okay, all these are gone, and you just double click this option, it'll pull up your tool settings for these tools. Under here you have discrete rotate, local, and default, and that should have her aligned to wherever her pivot point is. Now we want to make sure that her feet are planted on the ground, or at least on the plane for here, on the grid, I'm sorry. So let's go ahead and check on the other viewports. Now this is something I had going on earlier because I was already messing with the art kit earlier today. So if this happens, easy enough to go back to your default settings. So all these say front. So for this one here, I'm just going to make it the top because I don't look at the top that often, or as much as I do for the front and right sides. So on orthographic views, I'm going to set this one to the top. And we're going to need to go ahead and flip this. I'm going to rotate it so she's facing the way that I need her to face. And from here, we're going to go ahead and change this one to front, down, and this one is going to be side. Go ahead and flip that, and alright. So let's go ahead and we'll go to maximize this screen by pressing spacebar. Go ahead and move on into her feet, make sure she is planted, and she is good to go. So whoever modeled this did actually a really good job on making sure that her feet were on the ground securely, and her pivot point is directly in the middle of this grid. So let's go ahead and go back to perspective view. And from here, yeah, let me go ahead and get rid of these windows here. It shows all the camera views, so I don't need to see cameras. Those are gone. Those are out of the way. Alright, now we have her facing the right direction. Well, we still got one more thing we gotta do. We gotta get this axis to Z up. We can either do that through the art kit itself, but I sometimes like to actually have it set up that way because it can happen. We'll do it both ways. So if you first need to get this thing to rotate the direction, we need to have it facing for what Unreal uses. We're gonna go ahead and go to Window, Settings and Preferences, and go to Preferences. Under Preferences, you're gonna find your settings. You're going to have your up axis is Y, and for this we can change it to Z. Immediately you're going to notice that yes, she's on the ground. That's because if this was moved into the engine right away, she would be laying flat. So that's one way of doing it, or we can bring up the art tool itself and it will flip it to Z up immediately for us. That's great. I will also have another video up for you guys that will show you how to get this art kit up and running in Maya. I like to drag this off like I do because half the time on my screen, just the way it's on for Maya, I won't see everything down here. So I'll usually like to grab, and I usually take this, put it down here just so it's out of the way for now. This character is almost ready to go, so we're going to go ahead and we need to flip her with the discrete rotate on. I'm going to go ahead and flip her up this way. So now she is facing the negative Y and upwards of the Z axis. So if she came into the engine right now, she would be facing the correct direction. Also, a big thing you might not have seen and I did not mention was when you are navigating this, it might feel a little bit crazy just navigating around because it feels just off from your normal viewing port. You could try to push F to focus, like it's just really far out there. But usually if you're trying to go back to your default hotkeys are Alt and Home. That'll set you right back down to the grid area at normal viewing space with the axis still in place. So go ahead and zoom out here, select our character here so we can frame it with the F button, and she is facing the right direction. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and we need to have a reference to actually make sure that she is the right size. Well, earlier I already had a character that I had done in the Unreal Engine before, and that was one of our other male characters. I have him on a separate layer. Let me go ahead and pull up my layers. Come on. It's chugging a little bit because of recording, but he's up on this layer here. And you're going to notice that she is tiny. She is the size of a small gnome, or even a box closet gnomes. But we're going to need to scale her up to around, I'd say, if this guy was about 6 feet tall, we're going to get her around 5 feet, or about shoulder height. So we are good to go ahead and scale her up. Move her over to the side here so we can see where she's at. More. Alrighty. So say, yep, it's about, I'd say that's probably about a good height. Maybe a little bit lower. Alright, not going to fuss too much about it. Alright, so she's good and scaled back up. So we're going to go ahead and on these, the X and Y value for translate, let's go ahead and zero those out. Tab 0. She's back in the center of the world. For our Trent character, let's go ahead and hide him since we don't need him. We just needed him for scale referencing. You can also do that too with if you're needing to know like how big your characters need to be in Engine. You can do it either by your preferences for whatever project you're working on or doing, or you can pull in, like what I did was I ended up taking a third-person character. I just made like a BSP object in the Unreal setter in the Unreal workspace. Just set up a BSP object, and from there I ended up measuring out the character's height in the third-person template to how tall that box was. I exported that BSP object into Maya, and then from there I just measured it out, and this is how I got the height that Trent's based off of here. So I'm sorry if you can hear that alarm, but it's LA, it's crazy, it's how it is. So for now, let's go ahead and get her back in the center of here. Let's go ahead and hide Trent again, since he was our volunteer for measuring. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to freeze these out since our scale's good and our rotation is the way we need it to be. So I have all this up here on my shelf because these are buttons I commonly use. It's easy enough to make a shelf. It's like, for instance, like if you do a lot of modeling, you can go to your modeling here, polygons. You can hold down Control-Shift. Middle mouse click on this, you'll have this bar that tells you go, and from whatever shelf you want to make, you can do it there. I'll see about maybe doing another tutorial on doing shelving or not, and it should just fall in place. But these are tools I commonly use. You can also make your own, like for freeze transforms. I would go, think to animate, I'm sorry, it would be in edit, and I'm sorry, correction, modify, and go down to freeze transforms. And if you want options to open up every time you hit freeze transforms, you hold down Control-Shift and you can click on that and it'll show up at the end here, or you can just commonly just click that and you'll have another one set up on your shelf that you have active. I already have one here, so it's not going to make a duplicate. I'm assuming it's not. So right now, let's go ahead and freeze out these transforms, so that way if per se we accidentally at this point moved her some crazy direction, all we gotta do is just go through. We can select all these values and we can zero them out. I'm sorry, except for scale. Control Z that. Rotate 0, 0, 0. And our character is good and set, ready to go. I'm assuming most of you guys know how to set up materials too in Maya if you're commonly used to Maya. But But for the rest of this video, I'm going to assign the materials to this character, so we're not looking at a dull gray character, and that will be it for this video for setting up our scene. So real quick, let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and I will throw in her materials. This will be my first time seeing this character in my viewport with her characters applied, so in the hypershade. Pull that up. It's kind of grayed out right now, so I'm assuming it's just acting really weird. So let's go ahead and see if I can pull that up manually. Window, rendering editors, and hypershade. There we go. Now it opened up this time. So this is Trent's materials, and we have one Phong shader for what she has. So I think I need to make two of them because the artist originally put two materials on this character. Go ahead and get rid of these because I don't need these anymore right now. And let's go ahead and make one more Phong material because I know they separated the organic pieces with all the clothing to be two separate things. So this one here, we're going to go ahead and hold down right click. It'll bring out this radial here. Go down to rename. Let's call this one Alicia head. Call this one Alicia CLO or body. Same thing as we have a Trent here. So double click this to open up my settings, and I'm gonna navigate to my project setup here. I'm sorry, this is already here, and I need to assign a file. There we go, file. Go ahead and open up my image. And this is Trent's. We don't want him. We need Alicia's. And I threw that in the source images file for when I set my project. Alicia's clothing A. I believe I put this in the wrong Phong texture. I did. Apologies. We go ahead and flip that around here. We'll bring in her head. And let's go back, bring in our bump mapping. Be another file as well. It changes tangent space normal so it doesn't look all crazy in the viewport. Open up our next image, which will be the normals. Alright, going back again, we'll go ahead and go to our Phong material for the clothing. Open this up real quick. Clothing. Clothing out colors, and let's go back to our bump map file. Open up our clothing normals. So alrighty, we have our Phong material set up, and holy cow, we're going to need to do some fixing here because this is one Phong material that we did not need to have at all. So a little distracting here, so let's go ahead and we'll turn off the materials so I know which material goes where. Let me go in, and most of this body should be separated. It's just the hands were separated, and so is the head. And since all the head is applied to where we need it to go, I'm going to select the pieces I know are separated that are going to have the clothing. And should be all our clothing pieces. So we're going to go ahead, once you click, I skipped a few steps here, sorry about that, but radial, I'll go in radial. I'll select by face for the object I'm hovering over. That'll allow me to select individual faces for this object. And I just click a few faces on different parts of the body that I know are separate object pieces, but earlier this was combined to be one complete object. And these different parts I'll be selecting here are separate pieces from this, even though Maya's reading this as one object mesh. I mean, I just select a few just because it makes the grow selection a little bit quicker for me. But once I have a few pieces selected, or the areas I need to have done to have highlighted, go ahead and hold down Shift, and the right bracket key will grow our selection to our pieces. And if you noticed on the sleeves, they're not going any further into the hands because these hands, the head, and the hair are all separate pieces, though this is one mesh object. So all these pieces here, we're going to go ahead and hold down our right mouse button, we're going to go to assign existing material for the material we set up earlier. And let's go ahead and throw her body material on there. And we'll do another check, and she should look a little bit more normal this time. Alright, cool. I think we got an alpha channel on the hair, but I'll fix that before I do up the next video for you guys, so it doesn't look all crazy. But alright, and if you have this issue too, because there is an alpha channel going on, I'm going to set this up for Viewport 2.0, because there's an option that allows you to see this normally instead of having it see through like the shading is doing. It'll be just a minute before Viewport comes up. Alright. And I'll go into my renderer. I'll go into options. And under alright. That's going to be a part, I'm sorry. Back face smooth. So one of these options, oh, I'm sorry. It's going to be polygon transparency stage. So ignore what I did for the last minute there. It's going to be under your default rendering settings. It should be under polygon transparency sorting. This should solve that issue up for you guys real fast. Now she's looking like a normal person, not all crazy like she did 5 minutes ago. So alright, this is our scene set up and ready to go, and she has all of her materials assigned to where she is, so she'll look a little bit more normal once we get her going in the art kit. So